All right. Good morning, everybody. We are continuing our discussion on other logical puzzles just so that we can see some variety and that builds our experience by seeing slightly different kinds of puzzles, but underneath the same things are occurring over and over. And it just helps to build that experience a little bit. Now we've seen things like the Karuji puzzle, we've seen Lady and the Tiger, we saw that the Knights and Knaves puzzles were very similar to the Lady and the Tiger puzzles, where we would look at each scenario. Oops, where are we now? Oh, I need to just change my page so it doesn't jump. Where we have a couple of people in the Knights and Knave problem, whether they're doors, people, they're saying something, and I really need to look at the whole scenario because sometimes the statements are about both people, like we're of the same kind. I need to look at the entirety of the potential scenario to be able to evaluate those statements because I don't know if they're true or false. So it's really a combination, just like in Lady and the Tiger. The options that I have for the types or what's behind the doors, those are sort of variable from one scenario to the next, as well as what the statements are. If they are true, if they're false, that's also kind of variable. Whereas when we look at Karuji, try to find Karuji in the moment here for example, there aren't as many variables. There are the unknowns where the letters go. I have some options here, there, and so on. Oh, it's a little truck outside. Hopefully the background noise isn't too bad. It's not like I'm saying anything important. It can only enhance the experience. But the statements are always true. The clues, the extra information, that's always true, right? So it's not as variable. I have variability in terms of where the letters go and what's actually behind this square, what's actually behind that square, and so on, but not in terms of the statements. The statements are always true. I'll wait for this truck to pass by before we get to the actual question. He's just doing his thing outside, not caring what we're doing here. Of course not. Why would he? So we have some variety, and that variety really determines our strategy, right? So now we have exercise 218. Let me set it up while I'm still waiting for the background noise to stop. 218. He's on his way. He's going to go soon. Or maybe not. Maybe not at all. Let me close the door. And maybe that helps. So let's see our puzzle. And let's, as we're reading this once, see how you feel about this puzzle at the end, how clear it is. John, Jack, Jimmy, and James played a round of golf against each other. When they returned home, they all lied to their wives about the outcome of the game. John said Jack was first. James said John beat Jimmy. Jimmy said I beat James. Jack said Jimmy was second. Determine the outcome of the game from the given information if there were no ties. So, just like I write here in the little blurb in the book, there's no shame in acknowledging that reading this once, I am not confident in the answer. I have no idea what the answer is, to be honest. They haven't helped me. They make all the letters the same. All the names start with a J. Everyone's lying. 4 people are saying stuff. It's a little confusing, and it's supposed to be. But my only first task is to come up with a plan come up with a strategy for how am I going to systematically figure this out. I don't need to know the answer right away. That's not the challenge here. I would fail that challenge. All I need to do is systematically work my way closer to the answer. Now we've seen we've seen some basic strategies. Strategy one, the wordy strategy, where I write out sentences. It's confusing, it's hard, maybe we don't want to go there. And then I've seen strategy two. But even within the simpler strategy, we have some slight variations of how we may want to lay it out on the page. Now, what I do see here is that there's variability in terms of who's first and who's second, and so on. So my categories are quite clear, I hope, that a first attempt, and hopefully one that would work, is to make these first, second, third, fourth categories, and I want to eventually end up with a name for each person somewhere behind these places. In addition to that, so the variable is who goes where, who is in which column. There isn't variability in the truth of the statements. We know everything, each statement is false. We know that. So it's not quite the same as Lady and the Tiger, Knights and Knaves, where they're making statements, and depending on the scenario I'm investigating, those statements can be true or false, adding some variability to the situation. That's not the case here. I have just more information to help me figure out who goes where. So in some way, this is closer to the Karuji puzzle, where I have some spaces to fill in, only 4 in this case, and I'm given clues, information, statements that aren't variable to help me figure it out. So you might be tempted to take the same route as the Karuji puzzle. Now, what did I do there? I read each clue one at a time and saw if I could fill in any information. And by filling in something, I have made progress and I have eliminated something. So let's try that. Let's make the temporary information maybe a light blue, maybe like that. So let's see the first clue. First thing, John said Jack was first. Now I remember everything is a lie. So when someone says Jack was first, that is not true. So the opposite is true. So Jack was not first. So I can say, I'll write in brackets as well. Jack could have been second, third, or fourth. So these are sort of my little letters in the squares in Karuji as I was adding information. We just don't really need squares here, right? But by doing that, I have eliminated Jack in the first position. So even though it wasn't much, progress still happened. Okay. So I go to the next clue. James said, it doesn't really matter who says it. John beat Jimmy. That is not true. John didn't beat Jimmy, which means Jimmy beat John. The opposite has to be true. Jimmy has to beat John. So I have to say that over and over to myself to help me keep track of where I am, what information I'm processing, and so on. Jimmy beat John. So I could have Jimmy in the first place and John second. Then Jimmy would beat John. Jimmy could also beat John with John being third or fourth. Jimmy would still beat John. Jimmy could be second and still beat John, being third or fourth. Jimmy could be third and still beat John, being fourth. But see how I have eliminated some options for Jimmy. Jimmy can't be last because he has to beat John. John can't be first because Jimmy has to beat him. So even though I still have a lot of possibilities, I have made progress. So I'm feeling okay about my strategy. It's very much Karuji-like. As we were adding the letters in the bottom corner, and systematically we were able to make progress. Jimmy said, I beat James. That's a lie. So Jimmy didn't beat James. That means James beat Jimmy. James beat Jimmy. I have to say it over and over to myself, right? James beat Jimmy. So James could be first. He has to then beat Jimmy, which means Jimmy can't be first because James has to beat him. Remember, it's a lie that Jimmy beat James. So the opposite is true. James beat Jimmy. So in order for James to beat Jimmy, Jimmy can't be first. So let's get rid of that one. That's out. James could be first and Jimmy second or third. James could also be second and then Jimmy could be third, right? Those are possibilities. So I'm not eliminating the second one because James could be first and Jimmy could be second. That is still there. So Jimmy could still be in the second position. Okay. But I can say with certainty that Jimmy is not first because James has to beat him. Okay. So that was this one. Next, or last, Jack says, Jimmy was second. Remember, that's a lie. That's not true. So Jimmy was not second. Jimmy was not second. So I can eliminate Jimmy from the second position. But Jimmy has to be somewhere, and the only one left is the third position. No one else can be third because there has to be a different name, one of each person in each column. So I can therefore eliminate Jack in the third position, John in the third position, because Jimmy has to be there. Okay. Now, perhaps, this is where we're at. We went through all four of the clues of the statements. We made a lot of progress. A lot. We found where Jimmy is. But we don't know everything. That's okay. Just like in Karuji, we might loop back and look at all the statements, all the clues again. And because the situation or the information that we have is different now, reading the same clues might shed some light on things that they didn't before. So I just start at the beginning again. John said Jack was first. So Jack wasn't first because that's a lie, right? Jack was not first. Okay, that doesn't add anything. I already have that information by Jack being second or fourth now. So, okay, that doesn't add anything. That's fine. I move on. James said, John beat Jimmy. That's a lie. That means Jimmy beat John. Jimmy beat John is what's happening. I know where Jimmy is now. For Jimmy to beat John, John has to be fourth. Jimmy has to beat John, which means John can't be anywhere else. And no one else can be in position 4. Which means there's only one place for Jack, which means no one else can be second, which means there's only one place for James, and that snowball rolled very nicely. And there we go. It might not look exactly like Karuji, but hopefully you notice that it's a very similar strategy and argument that we followed. Nothing wrong with that. It's sort of in the middle. It's not strategy 2, which was very much an elimination strategy. Eliminate all possibilities except one, then what's left has to be right. that was really strategy 2. It's also not strategy 1 because we didn't write out any sentences. It's sort of in the middle, but it's still manageable, I hope. It's the Karuji strategy, if you will, because that's where we sort of saw it for the first time. Okay, now you can write your sentences here, but it's pretty clear. We have nice circles around it, first, second, third. There's no real confusion. If we want to do a more pure strategy 2, an elimination strategy, we certainly could. Let's see how that would go. So again, I'm trying to end up with names in each of these positions. That looks like an N. It is not. My goal is the same, but I can maybe go about it differently. If I want to have all the options and eliminate them to be left with one in each column, I could certainly do that. And it's just a slightly different view of the same thing, really. However, it's not a Lady and the Tiger, Knights and Knaves situation. And my best explanation for why is because there's no variability in the statements, in what people are saying. I know already everything is false. And Lady and the Tiger, Knights and Knaves, it was not like that. The doors were saying something, maybe about all the doors, content, like both rooms contain ladies, and I really needed to look at an entire scenario to be able to evaluate those statements. I didn't have a choice. But here the statements aren't like that. Because I know what they are. They're false. So it's overkill to look at complete rows and combinations of all possible ways that the people could place. I'm going to have too many for my liking. And I'd like to avoid that when it's too many. And when it's too many, okay, now I have to say John, Jack, Jimmy, James, or John, Jack, James, Jimmy, or all kinds of combinations, and it's just too many. Whenever it feels like too much, maybe I don't have to do that. Maybe I have to change my approach just a little bit. So all I'm going to do is write all the names in each column. Because in first place, one of these names must occur. In second place, one of these names must be the right one. So my setup isn't quite the same, but by doing it this way, I still have all the possibilities listed, just a little shuffled and mixed together. But I don't need to be any fancier because I already know everything's a lie. And I think my best recommendation is that because I don't have variability in the truth of the statements, I don't need to look at a whole scenario. That's the best I can come up with. It's really just a matter of experience. Seeing all these little variations, you start to build that experience without realizing it. Like, oh, I can get away with just listing everyone, and now I'm going to eliminate them systematically until I have one name in each column. That seems perfectly fine. Let's go with that and see if it works. Your strategy that you come up with doesn't have to be perfect from the start. Maybe you want to adapt it as you go. Like, ooh, this isn't going to work quite. I need to see a whole scenario. Okay, then you change it. But let's try and sort of be lazy and think, what's the minimum setup I need here to still get by? I don't want to make work for myself. So let's try this. So now I read the clues again. John says Jack was first. That's a lie. So Jack was not first. So I can eliminate Jack from the first position. See how it's very similar to this? But instead of writing possibilities, I'm eliminating possibilities. Subtle difference, but it's a matter of personal preference. And personal preference goes a long way because you'll feel more comfortable with the strategy that you prefer and that comes more natural. All right. Can't eliminate much, but it's progress. James said, John beat Jimmy. John beat Jimmy is a lie. So Jimmy beat John. So Jimmy could be first, John could be second. Jimmy could be first, John could be third, John could be fourth. Jimmy could be second, and then John could come later. Jimmy could be third, and John has to be fourth, but Jimmy cannot be last because he has to beat John. And John can't be first because he has to be beaten by Jimmy. Very similar argument. Just our presentation is different. That's all. Personal preference. Progress was made. Names were eliminated. We move on. Jimmy said, I beat James. So Jimmy beat James is a lie. So James beat Jimmy. James beat Jimmy. So James has to beat Jimmy. Could be first to second, first to third. James could be second and beat Jimmy. Or James can't be third and still beat Jimmy. Jimmy is not there anymore. James can't be fourth and beat Jimmy. It's not going to happen. And Jimmy can't be first because James has to beat him. So that was quite a lot we eliminated there. We still don't know exactly who in which column. Oh, actually we do. There's only one name left in the first column. I almost missed it. There's only James left in the first column. And that means James can't be second. Now I don't really know, right? Because James just has to beat Jimmy. Jimmy could be second or third, and that's still true. Okay, well, that was still progress. I'm feeling good about the strategy. We still have to look at what Jack says, and Jack said Jimmy was second. That is a lie. Jimmy was not second. And because Jimmy's only second or third in our possibilities, Jimmy is not second, which means Jimmy has to be third, which then eliminates all the other options for third place. And I still have John Jack in second or fourth. I'm not quite sure. But it's also not a concern because I'll just loop back and see if any of the clues now reveal that. So I go back, start again. John said Jack was first. Nope, Jack was not first. Okay, but I already know that, so that doesn't help me right now. Next one. James said John beat Jimmy. Remember, that's a lie, so Jimmy beat John. I know now where Jimmy is. Jimmy has to beat John. That puts John fourth with certainty. No one else can then be fourth because it says no ties. John can't be second as well as fourth, leaving only one spot for Jack. We are done. Exactly this. Well, it doesn't look exactly the same, but it certainly results in the same answer, of course. It's a very subtle difference between these two, and I strongly recommend that you can handle both because I want to know as I'm trying one of these two, I want to know that I have other options if it feels a little messy, if it feels a little confusing. Maybe listing everything like the bottom version seems tedious. Okay, then I can try to not list everything and just add information as I read the clues. Or maybe adding information. The Karuji style is a little confusing. I could then see everything and just start eliminating them. You can certainly go back, I'm sure, and do Karuji in a more elimination style by writing every letter in every square and crossing them out systematically. It's just messy in that situation. But in this one, really it's a matter of personal preference. And I want to know the options that I have available. Uh, and know that if I try something and it doesn't feel like it's working for me, I have options. Subtle options, but options that could make a big difference. So keep these things in mind as we look at the problems. Those are all our questions now. I have some explanation there in the book. You see a knights and knaves question. Well, it's pretty obvious what I'm going to do. I'm going to set it up. It's a standard kind of question. In 214, I see knights, knaves, and spies. Doesn't fundamentally change my approach, just the possible types of what the people could be are 3 instead of 2. Maybe it increases my options a little bit, but not the fundamental aspect of the question. So I'll go about it the same way. 215 is similar. In 216, I have 5 couples that were married on a different weekday, each on a different weekday. So I have to figure out which day which people were married. And then there are some clues. And again, it's not like someone is saying this, making this statement, and it could be true or false. I have all true statements, and there are clues that I can use to figure out the answer. So that's very much like Karuji, like this golf example, where I can take either one of the blue or the pink setups. Do I want to list everyone and start crossing them out? Do I want to start with an empty page and systematically add information? It's up to you. I want to be flexible enough to be able to do both whenever the situation favors one, in my opinion. It's personal preference, definitely. 217, I have a conference. I have 3 different nationalities, and they live in houses that are next to each other. Then the houses have colors, and then I have clues. For example, the Swede lives directly to the right of the greenhouse and stuff like that. So now I can think, okay, what is this closest to? Are there statements that are changing? And I have to evaluate the truth of the statements? No, it's just the content of the 3 houses. So I'll make 3 columns instead of 4 like the golfer, but it makes me think of the Karuji style. Do I leave it blank and start filling in information as I read the clues? Looping back, of course. Or do I list all nationalities, all colors for every house and cross them out systematically? Both would work. It's personal preference. But I want to spend some time and think about all these problems. Each one adds to my experience. Each one contributes something. And even if it's a struggle, even if it's a frustration, it is adding to my experience. I am getting better, even if I struggle or even if I don't get quite to the final answer. Last problem here. 3 golfers, Tom, Dick, and Harry, are walking to the clubhouse. Tom, the best golfer, always tells the truth. Dick sometimes tells the truth, while Harry, the worst golfer, never does. So right away, now I read that and I think knights and knaves. And a spy, but still, knights and knaves. So this is extra information. Now the first golfer walked in and makes a statement. I don't know if that statement is true until I look at the scenario of how they could walk in. So in this case, I would have to look at a complete sequence of how they could walk in, complete scenario like I do knights and knaves. But the more little variations I see in questions, the more I read a question and think, oh, this makes me think of knights and knaves. So a good starting point is to try that strategy and see how it needs to be modified, if at all. So definitely spend some time. You'll be better off for it. Look at these problems, see if you have any questions, and then we can, of course, discuss any one of them. But that is all we have for today. until next time.
Please remember to click the like button if you enjoyed the video, and to subscribe if you want to be notified of more videos. Thank you.